It's Andre from the High Performance Academy, and we're here with Harry from Precision Turbo to talk about Troy Coughlin's Pro Mod Corvette here. Now, Pro Mod's a class that I'm personally interested in. I love drag racing, and while Pro Mod's traditionally been the home of big cubic inch blown cars, now we're seeing a lot of high performance EFI twin turbo setups, and this car here of Troy's is obviously the epitome of exactly that. I want to just talk to you a little bit about the car. First of all, can we start with what ET and mile an hour is this car running?
The best ET that I know on this car is 571, upwards close to 260 miles an hour.
It's a pretty serious effort for a turbocharged car. How does that stack up against the blown cars that have been traditionally running in the Pro Mod class?
Well, that was not in Pro Mod. That was in an unlimited situation. In Pro Mod, this car typically is a 580 car at around 250 miles an hour, and that's right on par with what the blower guys are doing. Their mile an hour is down a little bit, but their ET is right with it. Blower cars also weigh a little bit less than the turbo car because the turbo car inherently has a little bit more horsepower.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about those differences. Let's just start though with the engine that's powering this car here. What is the engine block?
This is a 481X Alan Johnson motor built by Proline, tuned by Steve Petty. And horsepower right now on this car, it's limited, boost limited for NHRA, probably around 3,200 horsepower.
So that boost limit, I think you said to us earlier, was about 43 psi. That really holds that horsepower back.
That's correct. Last year we had unlimited boost. We were running upwards of 50 psi, which probably added another 150 to 200 horsepower to the package. That's why the mile an hour dropped in 2013 versus 2012.
Sure. Now back to that block. It's Alan Johnson. Basically, we're talking a top alcohol billet block. You're talking the best of the best, everything that you'd see in a top level Pro Mod car, correct?
Absolutely.
Now the difference though, those turbochargers, so traditionally these cars have been running a blower, sits in the valley nicely, sticks out the bonnet, you can't really miss them, and that's been what we've come to expect from these cars. The twin turbo setup, give us a little bit of an idea on what the pros and cons of turbo versus blower are on these cars.
The pros and cons would probably be relative to the horsepower, the power curve of a blower. When a blower comes on, it has a very smooth power curve where a turbocharger has to build boost, and you're basically chasing, the boost might be a little bit is based on engine RPM, so it's not as linear as blower, where the blower is direct drive to the engine, so based on engine speed, the blower is going to make a certain amount of boost. Turbocharger is not really attached in that fashion. It has wastegates and boost controllers and that sort of thing, so that's a different element that has to be sorted out to help the car get down the racetrack.
So in that respect, the boost control in a turbocharged car is critical to getting consistency out of a Pro Mod turbo car?
Absolutely it is. It's a huge deal.
With that boost control, are you using a boost that varies as the car goes down the track to try and get it to hook up, or are you just running the same boost the whole way down the track?
This car and virtually every drag race car is going to have some type of a linear boost controller on it, or a stage type of a boost controller. In this case, this car will have a predetermined launch boost that needs to be very consistent so we can get tire speed in the first tenth of a second. Then we're going to move into the first half a second, trying to get the car up on the tire. That'll probably be a combination of, in this case, because it has a torque converter, what the torque converter can do, what we're forcing the engine to do for power to get the speed up on the engine, to get the rotation of the tires, to stand it up on the tire, but maintain it so that in 3/4 of a second we haven't knocked the tire off of the car. And that's all obviously in the 60 foot. And once we get the car planted, then there's other events down the track to keep it in motion and get it to the 330.
With the combination of turbocharged versus the supercharged cars though, the supercharged cars seem to be able to get to that 330 foot mark faster than the turbocharged cars. How is that happening? How are they better in that first part of the track?
Well, they should be better. They've got probably 100 years of talent at each NHRA race behind getting that car down to the 330. They are a little bit lighter, but they also have a very linear curve. Most of those cars that are racing today are clutch cars, and of course there's a lot of great clutch tuners. These guys have been working these cars for 10, 15, even 20 years. Turbocharged cars, and I'm not defending them because in my opinion, they need to do a much better job getting to the 330 and we're doing pretty good now with turbo cars, but the blower guys have got a lot of history, and they can make that car go to the 330 almost every single pass, and they're going to be faster because they are lighter.
So this is just something that's going to come with more years, more experience with the turbocharged cars. You expect to be able to match those supercharged cars to the 330?
Absolutely. We really only have about 7 years of racing in Pro Mod with turbocharged cars. And really, it wasn't but 4 years ago that I think we won our first race with a turbocharged car, where blower cars have been winning races and nitrous cars have been winning races for many, many years. So it's just a natural progression. It's kind of like the new generation, and they've got a lot of work ahead of them, but we're dedicated to help them do it.
So obviously the turbocharger technology is one aspect of it. The other thing that's pretty clear is you've gone away from the old mechanical injection, and these cars are now running, well, this car particularly is running EFI. How is the electronic fuel injection an advantage when compared to the old mechanical constant flow injection?
Well, I think it's almost a necessity in a turbocharged application, because once again, the power of the engine is not linear to engine speed. On a mechanical injected engine, the power curve of mechanical injection and the boost is kind of directed to the engine speed, where again, on a turbocharged application, you could be at 7,000 RPM at 20 pounds of boost or 7,000 RPM at 50 pounds of boost. It's not direct drive. So you virtually got to have electronic fuel injection to map it properly.
In that respect as well, with the blowing cars, because that power delivery is so fixed and so linear relative to engine RPM, do you think they would actually see an advantage in terms of power from moving from mechanical to EFI?
I absolutely believe they would, because they burn more fuel than they're really making in power. They have to, and I think there's a really good argument that if we put fuel injection on a blower application, that they'll get better atomization and they will make more power. It's pretty easy to watch even on the starting line when a blown car hits the throttle. There's a ton of spray of fuel that comes out. Somewhere in that area was not efficient, because you just don't spray fuel out of the exhaust pipe. Just start with that and work your way down as you watch the cars go. I'd love to see fuel injection on a blown car. I think it'd be great.
Now, you earlier touched on the fact that this car is running an automatic transmission with a torque converter. The blown cars, you've also said it's common for those guys to be running a clutch transmission. Can you tell us about the pros and cons of a clutch transmission, a manual transmission versus an automatic?
I can, and I've raced both. I raced a clutch turbocharged car in Pro Mod. The Camaro that I owned that Brad Personette drove for me I guess it was about 3 years ago when we won a couple of races, was a clutch car. And the car last year, Donnie Walsh drove, the Mustang, and we won a race with that car with an automatic. There's advantages and disadvantages of both. I think the clutch program, of course, is a lot more work than an automatic torque converter car, but it also it's more efficient down track. You don't have to worry about torque converter slippage, but you do have to have your act together on how to tune a clutch. Most of the people who race turbocharged cars yesterday, and in the last 10 years, really never worked with a clutch program. So they don't even have that foundation, but they have been running converter cars for a long time. We ran a converter program last year for the consistency of it and the fact that team really didn't have a lot of clutch experience. And that's just what we started with, and that's what we wound up with, and we're still able to win races with it. The converter car is a little different program, where we still are fighting a torque converter that acts like a clutch as it locks up down track. So you still have to lock it up. You still have to get past that point, just like you do on a clutch. It's going to slip out the back. It's going to use a little bit more horsepower, maybe not show the potential of the car as well as a clutch. But it's pros and cons in both. Even blower guys. There's some guys running automatics, some guys running clutches. More clutches, couple automatic cars. I think both have won races.
Now, you say about the maintenance or the work that a clutch car requires, and that's basically after each run the car's coming back into the pits and the clutch guy is basically pulling that clutch out, resetting it so that it's basically set up again for the next race, whereas the automatic transmission, really it's not a whole lot of work. They're not doing anything with that torque converter between rounds, are they?
No, they're really not. We do have to cool the trans, maintenance, and all of a sudden temperatures become very critical when we're running automatic transmissions. When we go to the starting line, we're usually within 10 degrees of the last run, every single run on an automatic. Clutch is not that critical, but it does require more maintenance. When we race the clutch program, we won a race where we had to service the clutch every round, and we won a race where we could go 3 rounds and then service the clutch. But it's how you ran it, what you could get away with in those conditions.
And I mean, we've seen that on our own side of the world with the Sport Compact guys, obviously raising the bar over in Australia, and a lot of those cars, they're running clutches, and we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, they've really had to raise their game and learn a lot about the clutch to get that clutch set up for the specific track conditions, and really the guy setting up the clutch can make or break that whole race weekend, and whether the car's going to run a good time or not. The automatic transmission does seem like a slightly less stressful way of getting the car down the racetrack. Would that be fair?
It's fair, but also you have to have enough cubic inches to get up on the torque converter on an automatic transmission. Having been to Australia and seen the caliber of cars, which I think have really raised the bar to the rest of the world, I think some of the best racers in the world are really racing in those races, and I can't wait to go back next year in 2014. But I don't know that they have enough people working on torque converters for the smaller displacement engines where that's going to be successful. But in the same breath, they're doing a fabulous job on the clutches, so why give it up if they know what they're doing? Their biggest issue is we're adding more and more technology on the turbochargers, so they have to chase the clutch with the added power. And there's not a lot of test time there, so they got to be really good at what they do.
Look, this car is amazing, Harry. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It's really good to see companies like Precision pushing that boundary of what's possible with turbocharging and EFI, and taking it to those Supercharger guys. I look forward to the day when you get that 330 foot sorted out and you really show those blower guys what's up. Thanks for talking to us, Harry.
Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this program. I'm really glad you guys came by and had the opportunity to discuss it. And I just hope to see you out in Australia next year.
Cheers.
For online tuning courses, visit learntotune.com.